was a good night, man.
Yeah.
Good vibes.
It was. Listen, I got a question for you. Yeah. I think this question goes for Ladin as well, if he wants to jump on. What is it so special about football before we properly start? Like, what's so special about it? I'm still trying to understand till this day.
Yeah.
I
think like football can be quite, I feel like it's a difficult thing to sell to people who don't live it day by day. Because on the surface, it just looks like 22 men in shorts kicking a ball about. And it just seems a bit, I don't know, like primitive almost. And you think like, why do people get so passionate? But I think for me, like football, it's not just about the sport. It's about everything that's around it. It's like so many cultures play football. So many countries play football. Like it's like a relational thing you can share with other humans, right? And it's also like a sport that you can play anywhere. Like you go to a park, all you need is you can even take like newspaper, make it into a ball and kick it about, or 2 jumpers to make a goal. That's all you need. Whereas like tennis, you need a racket, you need a court. It's not accessible to everyone. Whereas football, mate, you can play in the desert if you want.
What's that other sport called? Football as well. Is it football?
Football. Is that like futsal? Is that the one like in the gym?
No. There's like with like a little ball thing. Like, you know what I'm talking about? No, not that.
No, that's like table football. Yeah, no, I don't know. But yeah, but like literally, you can just play football wherever you want. So I think.
Don't you think it's overrated though? Like considering how much the players like earn,
how much they get paid.
Yeah, and then obviously how much the clubs make in general. Like I just feel like it just.
I feel like, I feel like football's definitely been overtaken by greed and like a need to sell products on the side. Because like footballers don't get paid for how good they are on the pitch. They get paid for how marketable they are and how many products, how many boots can they sell, how many shirts can they sell. Like Ronaldo gets sponsored for literally with like chewing gum, or he sells like deodorant. It's not so much about he scores goals and he's on it, but
because he brings the audience with him, like regardless of what club he's part of,
he's a product.
He's got fans that follow him.
I watched
100%.
Oh god, buzz! I watched a video earlier today, and it talks about something circus. I can't remember what it's called, but essentially what it is the reason why the circus gets paid so much and has so much money flowing through it is because the more people go to the circus, the less questions they ask of the emperor as to what he's doing. It's entertainment. Do you think there's too much money being put into movies? No, because everything is paid for accordingly. Like Avatar needs to make 2 billion to break even. Some people think that's too much, but if you watch the movie, like they forget about it once they watch the movie because it's entertainment. Yeah, that's how footballers get paid so much. And they talk about how the NBA and the WNBA and how women don't get paid as much. But a comedian I saw recently, his response to that is, entertain us like the men's entertain us, and then you get paid the same. Get the man, because like men and women go watch the NBA. Majority only women go watch the WNBA, and even then they don't support them. Yeah, bring the same amount of people in the stadiums, and we could talk about getting paid the same.
No, it's true.
There's unfortunately they're not.
But you know what? I'm fascinated with the fans of football. Yeah. Like, I find, I don't know, just like, obviously there's all kinds of different people and all different kinds of fans as well, but even like to the point where it's almost so stereotypical where like if the club is losing, they go like, oh yeah, I knew this player shouldn't have been on anyways, or I knew this shouldn't have happened, we need a manager, or they talk about it like it's like they're part of the team. Yeah. It's almost like a religion to some people, like.
Yeah, I mean, it's, like you can watch videos of like fans in Argentina, like right now during the World Cup, and like I was in Argentina in January traveling, and the amount of love for football, like Maradona, who died, I don't know, a year ago, who's like this big Argentinian football player, and it's literally every wall is just this guy plastered all over, and people, you know, when he died, it was during COVID, and the main square, like the Trafalgar Square, I can't remember what it's called, thousands of people during lockdown. Insane. And I think with football, like you talk about people say, like if you're watching the game, you're like, I would have done better than that. I know exactly what the answer is. I think that's because football is like a relational sport. So you see yourself, like most people have played football before, you know, and a lot of people play regularly or watch regularly. And I think you're basically, those players are playing for you, they're playing for your team, for your city. That's what football used to be anyway. And so you feel like you've got almost like a shareholder, like you feel you've got like money. So you're like, well, I paid a ticket, you know, like I I pay your salary so I can tell you what to do. And yeah, it's quite a weird thing to hear, but I'm guilty of it as well, even though I'm terrible at football. But I'll be like, oh mate, I would have scored that.
That's an interesting. That's an interesting way of looking at it. I saw this meme. Yeah, it made me laugh. Yeah, and it said we need to get professional athletes to go to regular people's jobs and tell them, "Boo, you're packing the food too slow.
Yeah.
Boo," you know, like because people be like, "Oh, you're running too slow." Like, that'd be funny. Like I'd love to see that.
I think the community, when it comes to football, is the community that is the biggest sport in the world. Compare the World Cup, which is the biggest competition in
Is
football.
football the biggest sport in the world?
Yeah.
I think it's
and I say this is based on the metric of how many people go to attend certain competitions. The World Cup is the biggest competition in football. The Super Bowl is the next greatest competition, and it is nowhere fucking near the World Cup.
Yeah,
like insane, nowhere near. Qatar are spending, I think, like 10 or 15 times the amount of money I think Brazil spent in 2014 or Russia spent in 2018 to host that World Cup, because they know they're making that return no problem.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because of the community that it creates. Like a lot of communities that we have right now, the foundations are something very, very, very simple. Sometimes it's like this amazing example, the podcast. The foundation of this podcast is having a conversation. The simplest thing in the world. People have been doing this since the caveman times. You know what I'm saying? The simplest thing in the world, having a conversation.
Nobody does it like us though.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing, is it doesn't matter about the...
I was doing the Donald Trump line, you know,
you gotta plug it in, mate.
But like,
nobody understands women better than me. But yeah, go on.
Nobody grabs pussy like him either. But like, this podcast foundation is having a conversation, which is the simplest thing in the world. We all do it, assuming we can talk. But our goal is to build a community, and 5-10 years from now, at that point, we would have such a big community that everyone loves conversing and having fun together and doing great things together, whatever. But the foundation is just having a conversation. Now apply that to football, apply that to every single other community in the world. The foundations are something so simple: kicking a ball, kicking a spherical object. World War II. Do you know the World War II story? The Germans, the Germans and the English were battling for fucking years. And then on Christmas Day, they just broke out of football, started playing football against each other. They weren't kicking the ball and shoot people in the face. No, they were just kicking the ball into the net. Shooting that game meant kicking the ball into the net, not getting someone's head.
Isn't there something a bit more like, would I say primal? Isn't there like an element of like, it's still like, especially with the World Cup, it's kind of like World War in a sense.
Yeah, it's a lot like nationalism, well, like patriotism maybe.
Yeah, it's
I mean, to the point where there'll be hooligans who would, maybe not in Qatar, but
it's probably I did. So that's a fascinating thing, and I love, like, I'm more engaging in this conversation because I'm a big passionate football fan.
Should have never brought it up.
Yeah, man. When I went to Old Trafford, the stadium for Man United, that was my first experience of having like an actual, not first, but my first football experience, watching football live. And it was just a random European League game, competition, whatever. But the people I saw there, people were dedicating their entire lives to this football team. Like there's people living on the street, because where Old Trafford is located is like it's in the middle of nowhere. It's not like London Stadium where there's like a whole park built around it. No, it's like a street. The hotel the Airbnb I was staying at was like less than a 5-minute walk from the stadium. So people are dedicating their entire lives to this team, and it gives them purpose.
Yeah.
And has not like a lot of people like maybe Leo had this mindset once upon a time, but it's nothing to do with kicking a ball. Nothing to do with that. That's just that's just the glue. When I build a house, no one cares about the cement.
It's about the community, really.
You know what I'm saying? No one cares about the cement I used to build a house. No one cares about the bricks. No one cares about. We all care about what's inside or what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, the football thing is serving us right now. Like we're having a conversation about it in first place.
Yeah, it's relational, man. 100%.
Yeah. But don't you feel like people are? I'm not, and don't take me out of context, please. But I've just had this realization now. But like, don't you think like people are slightly victims to the whole following the football? For example, like, so what I mean by that is that they could have put the energy and effort into something better than just following football all the time. I'm, not to say if that happened, then that's completely fine. I'm not against that, if that's what makes them happy. But then, is there a possibility they could have invested that time into something more productive that would add more value to the life than just the football itself?
Yeah, it's a hard one, I think, because I think when football first began, like, initially, I think it was invented in like public schools, like by sort of.
It was in America. America were the first people to invent the sport football.
America invented the whole world.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I think it was sort of, and wherever it's created, I think it was more in this sort of public school, private school, let's say, environment. And I think it was quickly adopted, but especially in England, like adopted by working class people who I think, were working in factories and mines, and, like a lot of teams source their origins in those like docks, like West Ham, for example, is very much like within the docks, I think. And so I think with football, when we say investing too much time, I think it was like every game was on a Saturday or on a Sunday, like on the weekend basically, and you would work 5 to 6 days a week. They weren't working like we work today. They were working like 16-hour shifts. Get home, crazy. You sleep like 4, and the Saturday was like your one time to be with your mates, like watch a game,
smash some bottles,
watch some guys smash some legs,
beat some people up.
And it turned like, for sure, like, I think it was a way also for people to, to channel their aggression.
Yeah, that Green Street movie was amazing.
Like Green Street, Football Factory, Danny Dyer, that's also a good one. But yeah, so I think when you say, do people spend too much time and they could do something productive, I think yes, now if they're watching football like as a consumer product, like if you're just watching it and if you're just streaming and you're just, researching all the data and then maybe I felt you could use your time better.
Yeah.
But I think if you do go to the game on the weekend and you've got mates and you build that community that Aladdin and stuff was talking about, then I think you are doing a good thing.
Because I realized like secretly it became a thing of like it's a chance for people to get together and watch it. But secretly they want to hang out. Yeah, it's not 100%. Even about the football, it's just they think that it's about the football, but secretly it's about something else.
I mean 100%. It's like some people go to the barber shop, right? Or some people go to the pub, and on Saturday, like I went to watch Sutton United versus Colchester for no reason. Random. League 2, mate.
I never even heard of these teams in my life.
League 2, it's like 4th division. I just went because I was like, I want to watch some football live. Yeah. It's like an hour from my house. And I went with my girlfriend, but I feel bad for her, but it was mad cold. But anyway, and we got to the stadium and no one was actually watching the game. Like some people were watching the game, but you could tell the men were there to just chat. Oh. And like the club was, people, obviously people watching the game, but you could really tell that the like you're talking about, the first reason people were there were just to chat and be with your mates, and it was cool, man, and it was a good experience, and I
think for the actual football game is a catalyst to bring people together. One of the things I really love about football, and
it's an expensive way to come together, though.
It cost me 20 quid, mate.
Some sort of things are 20 quid for a League 2 game. Fuck,
so just go on, make your point. I just wanted to ask another question on that.
Yeah, so one of the things I really love about football and most other things is the rivalry. The fact that football can, depending on how much invested you are, if you're very invested in football, as an example, the highs are super high and the lows are super low.
Yeah.
But we want the highs to be super high. It was it's like if you wasn't as invested, the highs will be medium high and the lows will be medium low. It's like the more you're invested, the more wider your highs and lows become.
Yeah.
And you got that mix of the rivalry of I believe in this and you believe in that, and because you believe in that, I must be against you. And like we argue during the game, but after the game we hug and high five. When I went to watch the Arsenal, not went to watch, but we did like a watch along with Bob and Yumias. And I think it was like maybe 4 or 5 Man United fans and I think like 6 Arsenal fans, or like probably less. I think it was like maybe 3 Arsenal fans, and we're all good friends and we all love each other, whatever. But when the game happens, we are enemies, mortal enemies, but temporarily. I think that's the beauty in football, is like you're enemies, but temporarily. It's not avoiding, like we must all be friendly and happy and love each other and never be, no, temporary enemies allows there to be a better relationship after. Yeah. I've made so many friends through football because they support another team. And because that bit of rivalry, and then when the final whistle blows, I make fun of you because more time United win. So when the final whistle blows, I'll make fun of you, then we go have fun and go get some food, and now we create an amazing relationship. But it came from that enemy mindset that was so temporary, and we all know it's temporary. And there's nothing to do with football. Is just that kind of a community and relationship and environment. That's what's really, really beautiful about football, man. And you can apply that to anywhere else. Every other sport, any other environment, same thing applies. But football's like one of the biggest ones that the sport has.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. I even lost my point.
Sorry about that.
I was trying to take it in and it's just like completely.
Yeah, no, it's deep point, man.
Yeah, no. Just gonna ask you. Like watching a League Two game, I don't even know what League Two or Fourth Division is and all of that stuff. But watching that game, can you tell that there's a skill difference between League Two and League One? Like, is it obvious or?
Yeah, I mean, especially League Two to like, well, even like the World Cup was on at the same time, right? And yeah, but like, let's say even Championship, which is basically 2 leagues above, one below the Premier League. Yeah, you realise the skill difference in terms of, I think first of all, how in like League Two the ball stays in the air a lot. Like there's so many headers.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, like whereas in
that sounds more entertaining already.
Mate, honestly, and also the tactic is literally just like hoof it and just see it. And usually you get like one guy at the front who's really quick and he'll run the channels.
Yeah,
and you can just see a difference in terms of, I think, the variety of skill set on show. And I think in League Two it's like number 9 is like old school 6'2" hench, and you just throw in the ball. But also that's the beauty of it, and you get like 2-footed tackles. And whereas in the Premier League you see like there's tactics and there's skill and there's a variety of like combinations and people aren't just hoofing the ball, like they're really,
it becomes more of a chess. It becomes more strategical.
Yeah, there's like a methodology to it, and or you see players doing little skills or doing crossing 30-yard balls.
What about the acting skills though? Because like till this day, I just feel like if anyone wants to go to any drama school, they just sign up for a football team, and I think that's the fast.
Not anymore. No, VAR, you can't do that no more. Remember when David Luiz won
all of this acting, like just rolling and just like I always found that like interesting, man.
Yeah, that's like I feel that comes from like it's to exaggerate the foul to ensure the ref.
Yeah, you don't go down, you don't get the foul. That's
something very like inauthentic.
No, but if you don't, football fucking authenticity. If you don't drop, if you got kicked in the shin or kicked in the kneecaps and you don't drop to the floor, you don't get foul. That's the best. I've seen many fouls where the player tries his best to stay on his feet and they don't give the foul. So dropping is like, yeah, I don't like divers, I don't like overreacting, whatever, but it's like you're playing to the rules. You don't choose the rules. You choose how you play the game. You're playing to their rules. According to their rules, you don't drop, you don't get a foul.
Yeah.
Have you seen I'm bringing full ignorance right now. Who's that famous player with long hair? Like he's got, everyone knows him.
You give me more information.
With long hair.
Mustache.
Got a mustache and long hair.
Yeah.
There's a mustache and long hair.
Come on, man. You lot must know him.
I don't know, me in 2020.
It's like he's just a famous guy. Like, it's just everyone knows him.
David Beckham? No.
Basically, I've seen a video of him getting stomped on the head and then he elbowed a guy on purpose. Later.
That was Zlatan Ibrahimovic.
Yeah, there you go.
Big nose, yeah.
Swedish guy.
Swedish, yeah.
Yeah. Like, you lot seen that video?
No, he's different. Yeah, he's nuts. He's crazy.
Listen, he got stomped on the head. And then later he elbowed the same guy.
He's a professional. I think he's a black belt in a couple martial arts.
Yeah, he's like a martial.
If you see, look at his goals are like very acrobatic goals. He scored a bicycle kick from outside the box against England.
Oh yeah,
this guy's
that's the maddest goal.
As well.
That's nuts.
So one of the things I want to kind of go back on about, he was talking about the whole pricing and how much people pay for the wages and whatnot, and I kind of think it's justified, especially like anyone that has a big name. You can't go to the shop. You don't get these luxuries of going to the shop and buying yourself a one drink or something like that. You don't get those luxuries.
How much is an Arsenal t-shirt?
90 quid maybe.
95.
Yeah.
I'd rather buy some FTX with that.
No, and then with that FTX, mate, the profit you make from that, you
and he was gonna laugh at that because he was talking about you still probably believe that crypto is a Ponzi scheme. Obviously, I
don't know that much about it, but
we don't have to get into that conversation anyways. But you seen the FTX stuff?
The FTX thing. Yeah, is that that was a scam basically?
No, that was a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah,
no, that was a serious Ponzi scheme. But it's ridiculous, like how.
Yeah, I see what you mean by being just. I mean, it's justified in terms of like the logics of capitalism, right? Like the logic of like how much money it makes. And
no, but even like you as an individual, like Leo, we're doing this podcast. You're now in the public face, right?
Yeah.
Fast forward maybe 5-10 years from now,
in front of 200 people.
What was it?
The next Joe Rogan.
Fast forward to
Leo Rogan.
Ooh, the Leo experience. Sounds like a terrible.
That'd be quite good.
But fast forward like 5-10 years.
That's the best experience someone can have in life.
Like
you can't go to the shop. You can't walk down the streets, or you can't go to a park no more. You can forget about that shit. all these luxuries you have of like you get all this fame, money, and whatever, but you can't fucking. So when it comes to footballers, like their faces on the fucking screens regularly, especially like Prem or World Cup players, their face is there.
No.
So they don't get the luxury of doing these simple things that we get to do all the time. And but you have to compensate somehow, and that's where the money comes in, and you go buy an island like Epstein and do some dumb shit like that.
Whoa!
But regardless, those luxuries are out of the picture now. So you have to compensate somehow.
That's prison bait chat, that mate.
Oh fuck!
Regardless, but that's kind of my take on like.
So we take no responsibility for what this guy says.
I used to want that shit, but come on, move on.
No, but yeah, fair enough.
I fully understand it. I fully understand it.
Cool story, bro.
Minus the Epstein stuff, but yeah.
Cool story, bro. Alright, here's a question for you. Yeah.
No, yeah.
Obviously, I know you're someone that likes reading, and I feel like you've read a lot of good, interesting books from at least I known you for like a year or something now.
Yeah,
over a year.
Yeah, just over.
I think even within this period, I've seen you read at least 4 different books, and you probably read way more than that without me even seeing it. If you was to recommend 3 books to the audience and the community that we've got, what 3 books would you recommend and why?
I kind of thought maybe that would be like I thought maybe a question of that would, so I kind of thought about it on the train here, but
oh shit, you knew it was coming.
I thought like, if you asked about books, which one would I say? But I think there's a book, depends what you like, right? But I think for me, I read mainly non-fiction. So like, for example, I would recommend Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein. She's like this Canadian author, and it's literally a book about, it's like a book that tries to explain how neoliberalism, which is the form of capitalism that we exist in, so basically how free market is taking over the world, and essentially tries to explain how free market, which is what we live in right now, has taken over different countries, and uses different case studies to like explain how banks and the need to allow foreign money to go into a country, basically local governments would get corrupted to allow foreign money to come into the country. Basically, that's the best way of explaining it. And she does like many cases. She talks about Guatemala, which is where like my dad's from, and Latin American countries like Indonesia and stuff like that. So that's really cool. Another one that I'd recommend is it's called The Prisoners of Geography by Tim Marshall. And honestly, it's so good to the point that it even predicted the Russia-Ukraine war. And essentially it looks at geography and how countries and the politics of countries are determined by the landscape. So for example, it says that Russia, so I can't remember too much about the book, but you read a book or like a movie, you might not be able to say the whole thing, but you just leave with a feeling.
That sounds really interesting.
Mate, it's so good. It's available like now, like it's easy to buy. But so for the example of Russia, Russia is one long plain that has no mountains to protect it. So it has to be a really aggressive state because it's got no natural barrier. So it has to attack to keep its borders safe because there are no like natural barriers. Or like, for example, India and China have never had a war because of the Himalayas. And you just like resource wise, you can't take troops across the Himalayas. So that's contributed to peace between the two countries.
Yeah, that's interesting. Right. I never even thought about how landscape can play into all of that. Like, I know it's important, but not.
So, or like it explains why, like when the US when people discovered the US and then colonized it, it was just in the East, like the Anglo version of America. And then there was all like French and Mexico and Spanish colonies. And that's why the troops, the Anglo-Saxons, were so determined to capture the rest of the country so that they would have both sides of the coasts under control. They couldn't leave one coast to be in a different country's property.
That's interesting.
Yeah, mad. And then the last one, I feel like I'm going to do like politics deep books, but the other one I thought of is it's called Rogue States by Noam Chomsky, and it's essentially, if you read the media, right, you'll think that, do you remember like 2001, 2003, there was that speech by Bush who said North Korea, Iran, and Iraq were like the trident of evil. I don't know if you remember that, but
no, 2001 I was in Lithuania.
Yeah, fair enough, man. Had other things on your other things on your radar.
I don't know. I was probably watching MTV, bro.
Yeah, fair enough,
the 50 Cent in the club.
MTV base.
No, seriously. I was in Lithuania at that point. I was not into.
I mean, I don't remember him doing it at the time, but just reading it. But anyway, he singled out these 3 countries as like it's not something like the triangle of evil or something like that. And anyway, this book, it looks at how actually basically those countries were determined to be evil based on like human rights, based on different factors. And this author is saying that actually if we judged America by the same criteria, they would be the evil state.
Yeah.
But the way the media works, we're sort of conditioned into believing that Iran and North Korea are evil and we're the good guys.
I mean, I
and obviously on some metrics, 100%, but yeah.
I don't understand how people don't get that the media's full of shit, like most of the time.
Man,
like
just
99%.
Propaganda, man. It's just...
Yeah, but listen, there's this element of like, there's something really like stupid about like being on a train and then picking up a newspaper and then reading something and going, oh yeah, I fully trust these people. Like you haven't even met who's written the article. Have you met the person who's written the article? Have you even understood what material they used to write the article? And it's like giving the blind trust, like instantly saying, oh my God, it must be true because it's a newspaper. And it kind of gives it like, they believe that it gives it some kind of validity, that it's a very, would be like a reliable source of information. It just, to me, it's just mind blowing. I've always questioned it. And I think now, especially with this, with the, Ukraine and Russia situation as well, obviously, again, I'm not necessarily like agreeing to what Russia's doing. But I kind of feel like they've been kind of backed in a corner. How they're dealing with it is not the right way, maybe. But the whole like Soviet Union thing and NATO, right? It's like the agreement after Soviet Union disbanded was like that they won't expand NATO, and then they expanded NATO in all the countries that they said it wouldn't. And it's just like, and then I started looking at all these things, but then on the news they'll just say like, oh, Russia's doing this and Russia's doing that, Russia's doing this, but no one's talking about the prior agreements that happened globally years ago. But yeah, it's a negative place, man. Like there's nothing positive in the news at all.
Nah, I mean, I feel like it's just it's a way to condition human beings to accept certain truths. And I think you were saying like why people trust it. I think it's just like, I think it's a reassuring thing to rely on. I think people work hard, or maybe don't work hard, but most people work really hard and they don't have time. They got kids and they got all these things to worry about, and then you want to know what's going on in the news, so you haven't got time to do the research, or you don't want to, and so you just pick a newspaper that follows pretty much what you believe the world to be, and then you just put your faith in it. Right?
Well, I use news as a as a research prompt now. So like whenever something comes out in the news, I'm like, cool, I need to do some research.
And you look for the opposite.
Either the opposite or whatever it is, but I'm like, there's more to it. Whatever they're saying, that's not all it is. It's like they're just obviously putting a narrative or a spin on what's happening, but there could be potential different reasons. Like, and I mentioned this before, like the Taiwan thing, it's like they produce like 90% of the world chips.
Yeah.
But then on the news they'll say like, oh, China's about to do this with Taiwan and whatever, but actually they're just interested in it strategically. And there's all these different reasons for these like political games and stuff. Are you into politics? Because I know you said one of the things you want to talk about is politics, but
I mean, I find it interesting. But even if the books I mentioned were sort of politically orientated, and I studied at uni, so I'm definitely interested in it. I'm not so much politics like government parliamentary politics and Tories versus Labour. I'm not too into that, but like international politics, foreign policy, I'm not an expert at all, but I do enjoy it.
And is it more from, and correct me if I'm projecting, is it more from an angle of like understanding how they sort of maybe like, should I use the phrase, play games with each other? Is it
like
more
interact with each other? Yeah. I mean, I studied international relations at uni, and international relations is basically the theory of understanding why countries interact with each other the way they do. And you just essentially try and predict behavior of different countries based on history, based on like culture, socioeconomic stuff. yeah. So definitely, yeah. 100%.
Even like, for example, even like America giving out loans that are dollar based, and then, you know, when the dollar goes up, it's like people owe more money to America.
Yeah.
So like even that stuff is like, it's all fascinating and it's all intentional.
Yeah.
Like China giving out loans to Africa, and, you know, kind of like trying to sort of like get a grip of Africa.
Yeah. So where do you get your news from? Like if you say you don't really, or if you use, where do you do most of your research? If you, so I'm quite interested in hearing
it's
how
gonna
different.
sound funny. YouTube, Google. There'll be like, so when I hear something on, let's say, a particular thing, I then go and look into it furthermore. And obviously, you know, like at the end of the day, like I guess none of the information is always 100% correct.
Yeah.
But there are like certain things that are up on there. Like for example, you'll see some documents that are, you know, publicly published, and you can see those type of things. I feel like those are the most reliable sources of information.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Yeah, like WikiLeaks and stuff.
but there is no like, even like fact checking websites is even they're not 100% correct.
Yeah.
So there is an element of like, I guess like having theories or just, you know, a bit of judgment or whatever it is. So even I know like it's not always 100% correct.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, man. I mean, yeah, I totally understand. Even the fact checkers, like you said, the websites, you find out that they're funded by like a particular group, or you know, there's a lot of fact checking during COVID that turned out to be incorrect afterwards, or a lot of theories turned out to be correct and stuff. And yeah, you can't.
I always love how people dealt with it after. And everyone goes, "Oh my God, I told you so. You see, this
I was like that, man, for sure.
Yeah. And it's just, yeah,
Guilty
like,
of that.
till this day, like, bro, like I said this before a couple of times, yeah, like when people were saying it's the 5G towers spreading COVID, I was just like,
people
oh
actually
my
burning
God.
burning towers. Yeah,
I think
crazy.
logically, to me, what made sense, that was the best time for them to roll out the 5G towers, because, you know, there's no people out and about, and
yeah,
it's easier for them to do the work. So everyone was assuming, yeah, because they're rolling them out, it must be that.
yeah. I mean, that was one of many theories that didn't really hold up, but
yeah, the world is an interesting place. There's, I think they're looking at now introducing, and I might even have all of them correct at the moment, but they're looking at introducing 3 different types of like I guess misinformation. So there's malinformation, disinformation, and misinformation. And I'm still trying to understand all these 3 different things, but they're starting to treat different types of information that isn't correct in a different way.
Right, okay.
And they say, I think malinformation is just like, you know, like when someone's doing it maliciously, obviously that's why it's called malinformation. So when someone's spreading misinformation.
No, like intentionally.
Yeah, intentionally, rather than unintentionally. But I find it all interesting because it's like a new thing. I always wondered what's going to be the sort of like the countermeasure to internet, which is like now everyone's got access to internet and people can just like share information, spread it. And it's just, I feel like till this day, because innovation just happens like this, and learning what impact it creates happens way slower. And I feel like till this day, we're still learning how we're going to be countering that, even if it's, I don't even know if it's even possible, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, the impact of technology is going to be scary. Like, you know, even, you know, like deep fakes.
Deep fakes, no.
No, man. So deep fakes are basically, there's a technology where you can create a video of anyone and have them say things they didn't say, or even do things they hadn't done.
I didn't know it was called that, but I've seen it. I've seen someone create like a video of Trump saying something, but it's just another person.
They did that with Obama and stuff. And yeah, man, I mean, who knows? Maybe we've seen a video that's been a deep fake already and no one knows. And
yeah, probably. Yeah. How would we know, innit? It's just, maybe I'm a deep fake right now on this podcast. No, I'm just playing.
We're all deep fake,
I'm just playing. But that's the interesting part. And it's just like, and I think this is like, for me, I'm on a journey of figuring out like where do I draw the line, you know, where do I go, like,
well, truth or just information.
Yeah, just like, I guess, and I you know, and I don't want to get into this whole like the truth is subjective too, but it's just like, you know, we have our truth, and there's their truth, and I think there's multiple types of truth out there. You know, I said this before, someone's truth is like, can be someone's lie, or someone's lie can be someone else's truth, and it's just like, what is truth anyways in the whole like aspect of what that means, like.
I mean that's a question that has been, that philosophers have tried to answer for since cavemen, you know, like, well, but we're not cavemen, but, you know, for centuries. So I remember doing a man talk here at 5 for Peace, and there was, I can't remember what his name was, but this guy was, one of the young people was speaking about, if you look at a bottle, you put it in the middle of the room, and everyone looks at it, everyone will be like, oh, this is the bottle, but you'll describe the bottle by the angle you see it.
Yeah.
So that, you know, it'd be like the perspective, and yeah, it'd be, oh, that's my truth. That, oh, it's a Coca-Cola bowl, but then from the back maybe it's, you know, and I can't remember what we were talking about for him mentioning it, but I feel that that's relevant to the truth thing, right? It can be, truth is perception, maybe, or perspective. So yeah, no.
I guess they're both the same. That's why I always try to understand what's the difference between like perception and perspective.
I guess perception is trying to make sense of like what you perceive to be true. Like it's like what you understand, and perspective is your own. I guess our own bias or lens that you look at things through, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, but I think to me, perspective, and even just getting on a philosophical conversation as well. I feel like a lot of people, and this is my experience, by the way. I feel like a lot of people misunderstand and undervalue perspective and what it is. And I utilize perspective as what it is. It's like, you know, the ability to see things from a different point of view. Yeah. And I think sometimes people forget that they have that ability to do so. And when it comes to philosophy in itself as well, I feel like people think that philosophy and life are two separate things. So it's almost like, you know, like if I say, I don't know, what's a philosophical quote? A man has two lives. The second one starts when he realizes he only has one. Yeah. That's one of my favorite quotes. And the craziest part it's funny that I said it as well, but the craziest part about it, it's not just philosophy, it's actually very applicable, or it can be applied to real life. That's what good philosophy is. So, but that's the thing. But a lot of times people make it, from my experience, they make philosophy sound like this thing that's not real or doesn't even apply, or it's just a thing. It's like a myth, basically. Like abstract. Yeah. But I started realizing philosophy is life itself, which is really interesting. Especially good philosophy. 100%. Yeah, it's trying to interpret the world and make sense of it, right? What's your favorite philosophy or philosophers? I think the thing about philosophy is a lot of it you got to really study, and there's a lot of vocabulary you have to learn, and theories, and it can be quite difficult. But I think the one I overall really sort of align myself with is Nietzsche, right? He talks about nihilism. Friedrich Nietzsche, Austrian or German, I think, and essentially talks about like nihilism. He's the one that said like God is dead, and he talks about there's a few things, and he's quite controversial because he was sort of adopted by sort of Nazi Germany, so I think it's a little bit tainted to talk about him. But he had some points about the fact that we live in a society, and that was written in, I don't know, like 19th century, and he was talking about how we live in a Christian, so obviously in the West, we live in a society that has Christian morals, but no one believes in God anymore, right? Like truly, because it was like during like science and Darwin and rationalism, and so he was saying we're living in this society where we're not plagued, but our actions are dictated by morals which stem from a religion that people don't really buy into anymore. And so it causes this lack of belief in anything, lack of, people lost their sort of, you know, back in the day people would just think my purpose is to serve God. And I think in the West that died at some point, and so people just thought, oh, well, there's no afterlife, so let's just go for it. And so I really relate more to that. And he talks about, he's got another book called Beyond Good and Evil, and he talks about how good and evil are just human concepts. They're not real. Like if you go into space, there's no good and evil. It's just between men that it exists. I found that like, I couldn't really wrap my head around it too much, but just that notion of, oh yeah, like, because, you know, sometimes it's like hunting, for example. People hate hunting, right? If you just went hunting for like rich people go hunting for geese or whatever it is, that's seen as evil. But if you're hunting to make food, to provide food, that's good. That's the dichotomy that he questions, and I was
like, almost become like labels to describe the action in itself.
Yeah,
it's like they get put into
and that's perspective as well. I just found that like
that's an interesting point in general. I feel like there's labels. There's more than just good and bad labels. Like nowadays, there's labels for everything, and it's like people can put. Like I think even in a sort of visionary sort of way, I'd put columns and labels, and then it's like cool. Throw this into that label, that into that label, that, and just there's so many different labels, and I'll be honest with you, I'm just tired of labels. Like there's so many different labels. I'm just like, how many more labels do we need to create to understand life?
Like what? As in, do you think people try and categorize people into too many things? And whereas
I just felt like not everything needs to be labeled. I feel like what we lost, or just going back on the conversation of like, you know, that person saying that God is dead sort of thing. I think there'll be people that's going to disagree with me anyways, but I don't really mind. But I think there's a possibility of being better than the religion that's there. So I think humanity got to the point where like someone can go over limitations of religion, as in like being a better person, whatever the better person means, if they wanted to.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's when religion kind of like lost its value a little bit, because someone goes, hold on, I don't need to be religious to do all of that stuff. But what I find really interesting, and I think this is what some people started realizing, is that even though some people might not be religious and they might not believe in God, if they learn how to enjoy the process of just living and just being present and all of the other stuff, it's like the life doesn't become meaningless or nihilistic anymore. It's because the whole point of life is to live.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, if I go ask a tree, it's like, you know, why are you alive? It's like the tree will say, I'm just living, you know. I think sometimes because we have this gift and a curse of like thinking, and I think that's what causes a lot of issues. It's like you make it more complex than it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we just ask ourselves more questions than we can answer, and that in itself, I think it's that inability to, because we can't answer these big questions and these complex questions, and religion did answer some of the questions, like the big ones, and you felt reassurance. And then I think that's where the nihilism bit comes in, is those big questions come out and you go, oh shit, like what is life, and how did we come about, and you know, is there any point in me being good or not? And just quite interesting.
But that's the thing. But when people draw back to, what if I just enjoy the process? Like, do I really need to know the answers, or you know, what happens if I just enjoy it? Isn't that almost like a better way of living, instead of just asking the same question every single day that I can't even answer? You know, and it's me repeating the same question. It's, you know, it's like talking to a brick wall. So it's almost like that. It's like asking the wall, it's like, how's the day? How's the day? How's the day? Every single day,
an answer,
and expecting an answer. So I just believe that some things are not meant to be answered. And you know what? And I appreciate it for what it is. So for example, like till this day, sometimes I just slow down and I look at things around me, and I'm like, how fucking incredible it is that someone's created all of this, like this, and till this day, I still don't understand how internet works fully. As in, like, I know how it works technically, but I just feel like I haven't realized the full potential of what that means. It's like, how crazy is that we can record some kind of noise or a pixel video and just transfer it and send it, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's insane. It's insane.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think if you actually spend time thinking about, I think there's a term for it. It's like absurd. Life's absurd in terms of like, you can just, people just take for granted, like, oh yeah, I think about it when I'm on a plane, like when you're traveling on a plane and people complain, like if you're late, if a plane takes off late or there's no food, you got to pay for the food, and you think to yourself, I'm in the sky right now.
That's insane.
Like humans have made a way where I can be traveling and I'll go from being in London to the Caribbean in like 8 hours.
Yeah, that's still long though.
It's long, but it's
I'm not
mad.
complaining. But yeah, it's still
It used to be
amazing.
8 hours just to go to the shop, you know, man. Like,
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I mean. Like sometimes you just got to be on the plane and go, I'm sat on a chair in the sky, and most of 99% of humans will make it.
Do you know what? Big up Aaron, because Aaron said, like, I had this conversation with him, which was really interesting. And it was just like, we're saying like the car is like he was saying that the car is like a sofa. It's like you sit in a car and it doesn't feel like, it's the same way. It's like if you sat down and you turn on the TV,
yeah,
and you flick through a couple of things. Oh, it takes a little bit more effort, of course, because you have to like pay attention and all of that stuff. But
yeah.
I mean, we're getting to the point where you can have a Tesla that's autonomous. Autonomous,
yeah, self-driving,
yes, self-driven.
Self-driven, yeah.
So yeah, like we got to the point where like actually someone can sit down and press a couple buttons and sit.
And then just
and that's what that's what airplane is. It's just like this ability to just stay somewhere and be transported.
Yeah, it's mad, mate.
It's crazy. We don't have to like walk, because back in the day, walking, cycling, whatever it was.
Yeah, mate. Using mules.
Yeah, now just sit the fuck down and chill. You know what I'm saying?
And pay like sometimes 20 quid return. Like,
yeah, sometimes. Yeah, not all the time.
Yeah, it's mad. And people should just sometimes you gotta look back and just be more in the moment and just be grateful.
And then the thing, like, I was a sperm cell at one point. Like, man was literally swimming out there, like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, one in a.
My dad could have had a bash that day, and I would have come out in that. You know what I'm saying? No, it's actually crazy.
Yeah, it's true though. Yeah.
I would have come out there. Like, man, I would have never even been here in the first place.
Just be swimming through the gutter, mate.
Yeah.
That's it.
Just to exist, and it's actually incredible. Life is so beautiful, man.
Yeah, it is, man.
Yeah,
it's good to be aware of that. 100%.
But yeah, man. What would you say is one of your most important lessons in life so far? Like, what is it that you'd share with people? Actually, I was meant to ask another question anyways. I'll
go for it, man.
No, after this one.
Most important life lesson. I don't know. Go on, man.
Let me rephrase it, yeah. What's the one thing you'd want your child to learn that you'd think would be important in his or her life?
There's one I always remember this is more of a jokey one, but I remember my dad telling me when I was in primary school, like year 7, and he was like, be nice to all the girls, even the ugly ones, because some of them might turn out to be quite pretty when they're older, and if you're the only one that was nice to them, they'll be nice to you in the future. And as a joke, I think that's quite a good analogy. So that always made me laugh. But I think in terms of general life,
that is funny though. I'm definitely teaching my kids that.
Mate, definitely a good one. But I think otherwise, I don't know. Life lesson. I think I've done a lot of therapy recently, and I think for me, it's just about. I think sometimes I lived my life a lot thinking I was like the protagonist of a story, or the antagonist, like the bad person, and actually you just are. You're living, and end of the day, and that stopped me from doing so many things. Like I wouldn't do things in front of people because I'd be scared about, and be like, end of the day, no one cares.
Yeah, no one.
Just do your thing,
shit,
man, and I think that's probably the biggest one. Just. You are who you are, and you're worthy for what you do. And end of the day, if you fail at something, you'll get better. Or if you don't, you do something else. But I wish I'd sort of known that earlier. 100%.
There is a level of like relief around that, and like you are the story. Like you are the story, and I think in a weird way, like I've started appreciating people for that even more. It's just like I look at people like you are the story, like you are your own universe, and you're sharing that universe with me, and it's just like it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, man.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I feel like you always try and get to know people for who they are, and people don't always. I think sometimes people try and fit other people into their lives in roles that they want them to act in. Yeah. And if you don't fit within that role, then they won't even give you the time of day. I feel like with you and a lot of people, like 5 Piece, I felt that it doesn't matter what role you play, as long as you have that good energy, you'll be accepted. Yeah. And I think that's a good thing, man.
Definitely, man. I think, I started living my life in a way of, and it comes from a quote, which is, it's not looking at people for what they can do for me, but it's looking at people for who they are. And I think nowadays in the current society, there's a lot of like, what can someone do for me sort of thing. Like, let me be friends with that person because of what they can do for me.
It's like transactional.
Yeah, and it's just, and you know what, in a weird way, I find it quite sad. Have you ever, you watched or read Mice and Men?
No, I actually haven't, but I know what you're talking about.
So I've the only reason I'm bringing it up because that's something I had to study in school. And I didn't even understand English at that point anyways, but I started clocking it like my last year of school. But anyway, one thing that stood out for me in that story of Mice and Men is that Lenny and the other guy, I can't remember his name now. George. Yeah, Lenny and George, is that the relationship that they had, and they were describing as if they were living in times where everyone was out there for themselves. And George and Lenny had each other, and that sort of bond, like, to me stood out quite a bit. And then I was reflecting about it, like, more and more as a recent. I was just like, actually, what they described in that story of everyone being out there for themselves, like, I see that a lot in my day-to-day life. Yeah, like, I see that with people, and it's just like, some people are like really, would cutthroat be the right word? And it's like, maybe selfish.
Or like or even like backstab, or maybe that's a bit too far. But
yeah, and it's just like, and I see that, man. It's just, and to me, I was just like, look, like, I think there's a combination, there's different elements of maybe, parenting or society or experiences or hurt people, whatever it is. But it's like, my thing is just like, can't we just rise above the experience? It's like, still be better than the experience. Like, we all make mistakes and things happen,
I was actually thinking about what you said just now in terms of, I noticed it, when you go on the tube and if it's a busy day and the doors are about to close and it's like mad packed, like early in the morning, people will push you out of the way to get in onto the tube, regardless of like, I've seen people like push old people about just to get on that tube, but I think that's like a good analogy of people, if they need to get somewhere, they'll, all this cooperation, like we're here for each other, just goes out the window and you just go for it. So I think that,
and no one gives a shit. And the thing is, if that was, and this is why empathy is like super important. If that was like, maybe, I don't know, the dad or someone that's being pushed out of the way,
get vexed.
Yeah, they'll get vexed, but also I think they would understand what that means. And I think the behavior changes a little bit. Or if that's a person they had a conversation with, they wouldn't be pushing them out of the way. I think there's a little bit of defense of, I don't know this person, so I can do that.
Right, like, that's so true. I think, because I think especially, I think you find that way more in London than you do. When you go out of London and you go into like small villages or small towns, everyone's, well, not always, but some random person will say hi to you on the street. Yeah. And as a Londoner, you go, what do you want from me? Yeah. But it's just normal, man. People just show up, oh yeah, how you doing? And you're like, yeah, I'm all right. Who are you? Yeah, when
I was living in Fishguard Way, just down the road, there was this guy in the morning, they used to say hello to me. I'm like, what the fuck does this guy want, man?
Yeah.
It's like,
that's a London mentality. You just think it's transactional. Like, he must be asking me how I'm doing because he's going to sell me something, or whereas it's just. And
then when I started saying hello to random people myself, I was like, actually, this guy didn't want anything. He was saying hello. That's what I was doing as well afterwards. Yeah. But listen, since we're backwards and we just, our starting question comes in towards the end. What I was meant to ask you earlier is, what's the one thing that people should know about you, and how do you get your feeling of importance?
One thing people should know about me?
Yeah.
That's a mad one. I don't know, mate. I think for me, I think when I meet people, I just think people should know that I've come a long way. I think people will forget about that for many people. Like, it's not even just how old you are. Sometimes it can happen to you young, but people, sometimes it's taken a long way for them to be who they are. I think for me, that's one thing. Because on the outside, you might think, he's got everything going for him. Well, not the haircut, but everything else there. On the surface, but on the surface, it's like, oh mate, he's got a decent job, like healthy, all these different things, but but there's work that comes behind that. So I think I'd always want to show that. And what was the other one? Like, what makes you important?
And then what gives you the feeling of importance?
Like worth. I think honestly, like these sort of conversations, like, I love getting to know people. I love that and I think me being able to also, like, why I love reading is because I can then share that with someone afterwards. Like, it's not just for me. It's about sharing perspectives and learning about other people. And that's why I love traveling, and that's why I love football. And so I think what gives me that importance is, that's why COVID lockdown was so difficult, because you're just by yourself and you had to interact over like Zoom or, but I think, for me, what gives me importance is, being able to I read something and I want to share it and be, this article, I read this theory, and then equally hear it back from someone else. Yeah. So definitely.
I think you're a very important person for people in general when it comes to that. I think just having the gift of being able to have those conversations, and also being able to just sort of do your own learning about the world and then share that with other people. Because some people don't care about, they don't want to learn about the world.
Yeah.
They don't give a shit. They're just like...
Yeah, no, it's true, man. I mean, these sort of conversations that, like, what you guys are doing and just talking about, I think, like, abstract things. I think a lot of people now have to have a conversation that has to involve them somehow.
Yeah.
But actually having a conversation about, not so much what you think about something, but it has to be like, I did this, therefore I will talk about it.
Yeah.
Whereas these conversations where it's like, what do you think about the media, or what do you think life is? That is what I value a lot more than, mate, okay, you opened a new business.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't know.
I think it's interesting you say that, is because, like, I think I describe it as a reminder to life. Like, I think this podcast or conversation, whatever the title is or the label is, it's a reminder to life, which is like, there's like, life is beautiful. It's already a gift. And I'm not trying to sound like this hippie or whatever. And even if I do sound like that, I don't mind. That's cool as well.
Yeah.
Because people receive me in different ways anyways. Because I do understand that there is a line between certain things that are not always roses and all of that stuff. There's some crazy shit that happens in life, and you have to deal with that. But at the same time, I think this is just a reminder for how beautiful and amazing it is to even exist in the first place. And then how we also get to exercise the ability to have choices within the environments we didn't even pick. It's like the thing of just like, we didn't pick these environments, but we get to navigate through that. And I'm like, I find it exciting as well. Like, that's an exciting thing to do. There's a little bit of like, I have this approach now in life, which is a bit like, let me play with it. Let me have fun with it. It's like, what's the worst that can happen? Even in some intense like situations, I'm like, let me just have fun with it. And I use that as a switch.
It's powerful, man.
Yeah, it's quite nice.
I think you also, like, through these conversations and these podcasts, and even the way, especially, like, I feel like the way you carry yourself, I think you have conversations with people from different backgrounds. And, like, we both lived in London for I came here at 15, don't know when you came, from a different country. And it's like, we lived in the same city, but we probably had completely different ways of living in what's like, we had the same prime minister. We had, we all got Greg's, and we all use pounds. But the way you see London must be completely different to how I see it. And you can have these conversations. That's beautiful. Like when I'd never been to Newham before, and when I heard, just speaking to people and just hearing about their perspective about London, I'm like, I never.
And Newham
had
is
to worry about any
place. Of that. Yeah, Newham is a crazy place, man.
Yeah, I mean,
I was walking down the stairs yesterday and there was a crackhead just smoking crack on the stairs.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of deprivation, man, sucks.
I'm not even trying to say anything like in funny, but it's real life.
That's,
and the craziest part is, the door that we have, it's a fob door, but it's been broken for the last 5 days or something. So people are just getting in because it's warmer inside.
Shit.
But yeah, I was like, you all right?
And he was just,
Yeah, I was just like, yeah. And it just kept it moving.
That's what's, and it's just, that's an experience that most people have never had. Like where I moved to in London, or I'm from in France even, like, you'd never seen that before. And there's value in you having experienced that, and you could bring a perspective to the table that most people can't. And yeah, it's a shame that it doesn't happen more often.
I'm wondering if even like saying, like calling someone a crackhead, even if they are a crackhead, like, well, I don't know if they are a crackhead, but if that's even like a demeaning thing, like what does that even mean? That's a whole different, is he a drug addict, or is he someone that's suffering from something? I'm trying to say that there's all these different layers of it, and it's just like, I was just like, I even checked him in myself, and I was just like, why did I call him a crackhead? It's just like, that sounds a bit like disrespectful.
That's
for someone that's going through intense pain in life.
Addiction is pain, right? As well. So that's what I mean, man. A lot of people would see that and not even would call someone a crackhead, and they wouldn't even question themselves about. But whereas I think if you've experienced people suffering from addiction, you're aware of that, right? You're aware of the words you say. You're aware of what words mean in the way that if you haven't experienced addiction or seen someone with it, you wouldn't. So be like, he's a crackhead, man. Like, you didn't call people who aren't crackheads crackheads.
Yeah, and I think, not to justify it, I think for me, and this is why learning about ourselves is really important. And I think for me, it's almost like a defense mechanism. It's like if I get to make a joke about something or whatever, I disconnect from it a bit more, so I don't have to be as invested into it. Which is like, it's a good learning. It's a good learning to have, because I can.
Humor is like a coping mechanism.
Yeah, like it's just like, it's easier to make a joke about it. It's like, when someone, like, let's say someone's skateboarding and they just fall off the skateboard, it's harder to kind of emphasize and go like, what, I kind of feel for you. But it's easier to just go, ha ha, you fell off the skateboard.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, like, most popular videos on YouTube are like fail compilations, people falling over and hurting themselves. Yeah.
But then taking a little bit of time to go like, I wonder how this person feels in that moment. Which is also cool. Like, it's okay, we can look like idiots and we just move on, but sometimes there's situations where like people would laugh at someone when maybe that's not the best response that they can give to that person.
Yeah.
As a courtesy of connecting to that person. But yeah, man, listen, before we freeze to death, it's cold here and today it's snowing. It's actually what beautiful day to even do an episode on as well.
I'm glad you invited me over, man.
Listen, I appreciate you for, number one, for coming down today.
Yeah.
Number two, I appreciate you as a person in general, and I love the way your mind works.
Appreciate it, man.
And we'll need to do a part 2 at some point. To make it a bit more formal, so we usually ask everyone, if there's anything they want to promote. So I don't know if you've got anything you want to promote, or it's just a formality that we have on the podcast.
Yeah, no, I haven't got anything to plug. But got nothing to plug really. Just haven't got anything on socials, or I think about it, I don't do that much outside of work. But yeah, they think promote, just read books, man.
I like that.
That's it.
Really. And if anyone wants to connect with you, they can just hit us up and then we'll put them in touch.
Yeah, for sure, man. Always got recommendations.
We had scenarios where sometimes people want to connect with someone. So
100%, man.
And the question that we ask every single person, and I don't even know if those stats are real, because that's just, who knows how many people are in the world. But is it 8.1 now? No, 7.9. Huh? 7.9. No, it's 8. It's 8, bro. We reached 8, Bro, you said it yourself. You waste, man. Anyway. All right, so when you get a chance to say something to 8 billion people, what would you tell them?
What would I tell 8 billion people?
Yeah.
Man, these are good questions. What would I tell 8 billion people? I feel like so many things I would say I feel privileged to be able to even do, but something as simple as just like, mate, talk to someone new every day, man. Like, for example, like I work in a new place now, another charity called Football Beyond Borders. Check them out. But there's like coffee place run by this Colombian woman, and I speak Spanish, and I just wanted to, she served me coffee, working bare hard, and I was just, let me just have a chat, and we just chatted for a little bit. She told me where she was from, had a bit of, you know, spoke about coffee, whatever, and then just left. And I was like, I learned something new about someone. So I feel like if you can talk to someone new every day, like bus driver, whoever, man, bus driver, shopping assistant, like someone you work with, I feel like and whether even if that conversation doesn't go well, you just speak to someone new perspective, and I think that's the only thing I can think of right now. But
and they get to build the ability to have those conversations in general.
Yeah, and then other people seem less scary. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, 100%.
Some people are scary though. I'm just
some people are, man. 100%.
Some people are scary though. But yeah, 100%. Man. Yeah, on that note,
cheers, man.
I'm grateful, man.
Cheers for having me, bro.
This was long overdue. So.
Yeah.